So we're going to close the cameras because our next speaker is Jim Browning. And Jim is a remarkable person because he has more than 4 million YouTube followers and probably as many haters. So I also would like to ask the room, please do not make a recording of Jim's face. He really needs to be kept confidential. We've closed the camera, and also for the people who are on virtually present, that's the reason why we're not showing our camera, just the presentation. Jim, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll set my timer going. Nice to be with you all. Nice to be with like-minded people, to be honest. What I'm going to talk about is just some of my experiences with combating scammers. First of all, Jim Browning isn't even my real name. I have to introduce myself that way. And as you say, it's really just to kind of keep my private information private. And I do disrupt multi-million-dollar scams. So that's the reason for it. So apologies to everybody who's online and can't see the camera. So without further ado, I basically, what I do is I make YouTube videos. So if you want to see some of my output, just have a look for the name Jim Browning online, and you'll see a few of the videos. So I'm going to go through a couple of examples of those. Like I say, I'm what's known as a ScamBaiter, and that just simply means taking scammers off their scripts. As you're probably aware, most scams, particularly telephone scams, are very, very scripted. And if you can waste the scammer's time by taking them off that script, it's always a good thing. They're not scamming somebody else. But as I say, the main reason for doing the YouTube videos is education. And I know an awful lot of people are doing exactly the same thing. But I think if you can actually see a scam happen, and I'll drill into the detail of exactly why I can get really detailed information on the scams, I think it's much more impactful than say, this is the general advice, follow these 5 steps and you won't be scammed, look for the little lock icon. So what we're going to do, I'll grab this, go on here. So like I say, YouTuber who exposes scams, ScamBaiter, somebody who takes, basically tries to take people off their script. I go a little bit further though. What I do is I deliberately let scammers onto my PC, the very thing that you're advised never to do. But because of that, and I also have a voice changer as well, I will act like an old woman. I actually change my voice for the simple reason that I want to lull scammers into a false sense of security. I want them to think that I'm genuinely an old lady. But in the meantime, I'm looking at what is connecting to my computer. So scammers will typically use AnyDesk or remote control innocent, a few AnyDesk representatives here. But what I will do is do this in exactly the reverse. So when they connect to me, I'm taking a note of their ID and I'm connecting back to them. There's a few different ways of doing it. I'll not go into the trade secrets of it, but suffice to say, in a lot of the time, I can actually go back to the scammer's computer. And because of that, I can get really detailed information about who exactly it is that's scamming me. So I'm going to go through a couple of examples that I put online. Most of these are videos, of course, if they're on YouTube. If you search under Jim Browning, you'll find them. But one of the first ones is this company called Fairmart Travels. They are pop-up scammers. So a pop-up, if you're unaware, looks something like this in the top left. And the pop-up really is a fake virus message. It's malvertising, and it will lock up your computer. And this particular group were into these sort of fake virus pop-ups. And I'm sure you probably have seen these, or colleagues, friends have seen these before. What I was able to do was get back to the person who was trying to take control of my computer. And that's what I generally do. So the scams that I concentrate are those ones where scammers want access to your computer. And not only that, the computer that I ended up on was a supervisor computer. So normally these guys who are in the bottom left of the picture, they are the scammers who basically take all of the phone calls. Okay. And in the top right of that photograph, there is a supervisor, and he had more access. And in particular, I could see on his computer, he actually had access to CCTV. He was watching the rest of the scam call center. So tempting as it was, I thought maybe I should have a little look around that scam call center. And again, this is slightly dodgy because I know there's law enforcement in the room and I'm accessing somebody's computer against their will, but the only people who could have a complaint are the scammers themselves. So I leave myself a little bit open to that, but it's a risk that I'm prepared to take. But what it means is I could actually see their CCTV, and not only that, I could figure out, because I could see their computers and I could see all of their voice software, I could actually hear the calls as well. So I could see them and hear them. And I worked out the top right photograph is a photograph taken from a drone of this scam call center. I was able to figure out from the files that were on their computer, they called themselves Fairmart, which is a travel company. And you think, well, what's wrong with that? The idea is the front half of the building was legitimate travel work. But this little building in the rear with the white roof, it had a section just for running scams. And because of the access that I had, I could see exactly how much money they were making and where that money was coming from. So this was a golden opportunity to really expose the scammer. And in the bottom right is the managing director. His name is Amit Chauhan. And the only place in the building which had audio on the CCTV was that guy's office. So I was actually able to hear him setting up new types of scams. And incredibly, the whole operation I was able to expose. I actually got the BBC TV crew involved in this one. And they produced, if you Google for spying on the scammers, you can possibly watch that documentary. But what it did was it exposed right from beginning to end exactly what was going on in one of these scam call centers. So to encourage you, if you're unfamiliar with how they operate, have a look at the video, have a look at the BBC documentary, and you'll see exactly how it works. Now, what the police need to do something about these scams is two things. Number one, evidence of the scam. I had it, audio, video, the rest of it, but also victims. And there was an immense amount of that material sitting on their PCs. And you can see one example here. These are people who had sent checks to his company, and I was able to provide that. We were able to interview victims in the UK as well, and they appear on the documentary too. So I had both things the police needed. And the third thing, I guess, is publicity as well. I don't think anything would have happened if I hadn't involved the BBC documentary crew, because honestly, very little happens when I report these things. I've tried this numerous times, but I think because media were involved, they did take action. And eventually Amit Chauhan and the other guy here is his accountant as well, ultimately were arrested. And when they did arrest him, it turned out that he was living in the lap of luxury. Amit Chauhan was. He was living in something called the DLF housing complex. And I think the rent was something like $6,000 a month. He overlooked a golf course and an Olympic-sized swimming pool. He was living in the absolute lap of luxury. And you would think with all of the evidence and everything else and the publicity around it that you would count this as a success story. But actually, what I haven't put online yet is I've been able to find out through other people exactly what happened after that. He's basically still there. He's still in the office. As you can see, the timestamp on this video was about this time last year. And this is him walking into his own building, named after his son, I believe, or maybe it's the other way around. But not only is he not in jail for all of this, he's actually taken to suing Google. Google are the owners of YouTube, and every single reference to his company, including my YouTube videos and any of the BBC articles or Hindustan Times, all of the media articles, he wants erased. Well, good luck to him, to be honest. I mean, this was erased over a year ago, but he's come out fighting basically from all of this. So slightly depressing, but here's another example. This is a different call center, again in Delhi. This one was called the Ojas Business Center, and these guys were pretending to be the federal police. So they were pretending to be the police in Germany, Austria, and Slovakia. They're also pretending to be HMRC, the tax authorities in the UK. You can see some of their scripts on the right there, but it's basically all to get gift cards or money transfers. It's quite a familiar scam. They kind of reuse the same lines over and over again, but this was their scam. And again, I had CCTV for this, so I was able to both record their audio and video through their own CCTV cameras. And I was able to submit that. In fact, I contacted a victim or two to say, look, please contact the police. And eventually one of the victims did that. And in turn, they contacted the right authorities and the Austrian police. In fact, I've got 1 or 2 representatives from the Austrian police in this room today, and they did amazing work to try and bring this scam call center down. They liaised with their Indian counterparts, and eventually we saw a raid on this, probably about 3 or 4 weeks after it was initially reported. So that was the good news as far as that goes. I think they seized something like $150,000 worth of cryptocurrency. And we did see an immediate cease to one of the scams going on there. The other scam, which was in one of the adjacent, if you can imagine, there's maybe only 10 people in this room, but one of the adjacent doors, and you could see it in the CCTV, was a different type of scam. They were actually scamming Indian people. And again, it'll be hard to read this, but they had a job recruitment scam. They would download a load of CVs, contact the people with their personal details, offer them a job at a cost. And of course, there was no job. They were just after the money. But that scam, even after the raid, the very next day, the Indian part of that scam continued and still continues. Even this morning, they were still running the same scam in the same building. So you can see that this is just details of the arrest and so on. And again, thanks to the people who are here to help with that. But as usual, there's a but. Apologies. I've got a feeling that a lot of these raids, certainly within India, are just for show. I can't be absolutely sure of that, but you know, I can tell from my own evidence that the scams are continuing. Very little happens. So what can we do? The one good thing about all of this is, even though potentially India don't do a lot about these scams, and most of them are coming from India, the telephone-based ones, at very least, what does happen is the scams cease around that area, and have very detailed evidence of that as well. So even if it doesn't result in arrests, at least it makes the rest of the industry take notice and actually shut down, even if it's only temporarily. So it's always worth doing. And because I've only got a couple minutes left, I'm just kind of leaving a couple of questions hanging. I always get a bit nervous about what I do because strictly according to the letter of the law, it's illegal. I'm contacting or connecting to a computer that I shouldn't have access to. But at the same time, the only people who can have a problem with it are scammers. So I really don't think I'll get a proper complaint. But at the same time, I would like the police to be able to do, FBI, whoever, to do exactly what I do. There's no reason why not. It's not a very technical thing. It's more social engineering of scammers. There is such a thing.
Okay.
And I would really like to ask the question openly, is there a way of doing this completely legally without any issues? And again, that may result in a lot more of those scammers being arrested and hopefully actually stopped. Thank you. I'll leave it there, but if you have any questions, thank you.
Thank you very much,
Okay.
Jim. I'm pretty sure there are questions. Any questions from the room? Yes, would you mind standing up and speaking very loud? And Jim, if you wouldn't mind
Repeat it.
repeating the question.
Yes. So, first of all, great work you guys are doing. Sometimes watching your videos for scammer payday, especially for entertainment.
Yep.
Technically, I was only lucky 2 times in my life to be called by a scammer. So
Yeah.
my question is, I see you guys are with phone calls, talking with people and so on. So I'm curious, how do you actually get them to call you, or how do you get the number?
Yeah. So the question was, if you couldn't pick that one up, how do I get scammers to call me? And the very simple answer is any scam call I do get, I engage with it. And I have worked my way onto mugs list, donkey list, whatever you call them. And I'll obviously use fake names, and I will hear those names echoed back to me weeks or months later. So if you engage with scam calls, you will get more as a result. But I go right to the extent of actually pretending to pay scammers. So they actually think I've paid them in the past, and that makes me even more of a candidate. So I get far more calls than the average person. So that's for me, that's a good thing, you know. And I guess it's the downside of engaging with scammers. Okay, you're going to get more scam calls, but if you can afford to take the time to waste their time, brilliant. That they're not scamming your parents, grandparents, whatever.
One last quick question from John.
Yeah, Jim, you mentioned, and a challenge we have is in a lot of locations where these scammers are, as long as their victims are outside their jurisdiction, the law enforcement doesn't do, you know, judicial, but it sounds like this is even worse in India because they have victims in India and they still aren't arresting them or doing things. I mean, do you see that as a major challenge?
There is an official way to get in touch with the cyber crime police in India, but to register with them, you basically need an Indian phone number. Okay, so you can't even use the official way of going about that. I have to use backdoor channels, people who are contacts of contacts to try and get in touch with the right people. It's a nightmare.